Hello, welcome back to Hunter Tuned. Today we are going to be working on this little four-door EK sedan, and it has a built-up D16 Y7. No VTEC on this bad boy. No solenoid, but it has a Y8 manifold, and he supposedly has done the Speed Factory rods and pistons in it, and has a basic eBay kit, log manifold, and an eBay turbo. When I say eBay turbo, this is the pretty much run-of-the-mill, like T3 50 trim, 57 trim, 6.3 AR unit. A lot of times they're listed as like T3, T4 hybrid, which I don't really understand because it's a T3 flange. Yeah, we got an up pipe. Looks like this is like 2.5 inch pipe coming off the turbo, heading straight out the hood. We got a wastegate dump going out the hood, and we have stock injectors in it right now, and we're looking to, he wants to make 500 horsepower. I unfortunately told him that his goals are a bit too lofty for this setup. I have tuned a few other D16 Y7s, and 2 of them blew up, and 1 of them had rods and pistons in it, and it survived for a really long time, but it just didn't really make any power, any big power. The cylinder head and the camshaft on these Y7 cylinder heads are really meant for an economy motor. They're not meant to rev high. They're meant to just get good gas mileage, and that's what these cylinder heads were designed for. So when we put boost to it, obviously we can make more power, but there is a limit and a choke point in this cylinder head for sure. So I think something like this would probably make like 80-ish horsepower to 100 horsepower maybe. Stock, I don't know what they would make to the wheels. I've never dynoed a stock Y7 before, but I would think it'd be around 100 horsepower. So I'm hoping on like 15 pounds of boost we can at least make like 200 or a little over 200 horsepower with this setup, and that's kind of what I told the guy. So we are going to go through it a little bit. He just dropped it off, and he had to come back to the shop because he said he forgot to put his crank sensor on down there, but I informed him that when you convert these OBD2 cars, whether it be an EK Civic or an Integra or a CRV or whatever, when you convert the ECU to OBD1, it now utilizes the crank sensor inside the distributor, and you do not need the crank sensor off of the actual crank by the timing belt. So pretty much told him, just throw it in the garbage, you're not going to need it. But he said he just put a new timing tensioner on this thing because the timing belt was really loose. So you can see here, it does have quite a bit of play on both sides. So we're going to get down in there, loosen up the tensioner bolt. First, we're going to get the engine at top dead center. Once we're at top dead center, we're going to make sure that the cam is in the right spot, the crank is in the right spot, and then we will tension the belt with a little trick that I have. We'll pull up on this tensioner spring as we tighten down the timing tensioner bolt. So that's first thing I'm going to do, and then I'm going to see if this thing even runs. I don't know if it runs or not, honestly. So we're going to just check that stuff. Going to make sure that it runs. So we'll start there and see what we can do. So I'm going to start down here on the crankshaft, and I'm going to, oh, I guess I just loosened the crank pulley trying to turn the motor. So we'll get that tightened down first. There we go. It should be tight now. I did ask the kid when he was working on this if he tightened that. He said yeah, but I couldn't even spin the motor over. Man, this thing is really tight. Holy crap, dude, I can't even spin the motor over. What is going on here? Oh, it's probably in gear. I'm an idiot. It's in neutral. It was in neutral the whole time. Holy crap, dude. I can't even spin this thing over. Holy. I literally can't spin the motor over with a ratchet. Holy crap. Well, I'm gonna grab a breaker bar, I guess. Oh wow, did you hear it squeak? Also, I have to put the alternator belt on because it doesn't have an alternator belt either. Oh my Lanta! I literally can't spin this thing over. How am I supposed to check the timing if I can't even turn the motor over? I don't know if I should even try to crank this thing over. Maybe hit it with the starter, see if it frees up a little bit. Maybe I'll check the oil. This is kind of a thing where when you're building a motor, got to make sure all the rod caps that go on the connecting rods are from the rod they came off of, and you got to make sure that the connecting rod cap is on the right direction, because if you flip them or you put the wrong cap on the wrong rod, it'll turn over really hard like this. Or if it's not, you know, he got the no notch rods, he said, for this little single cam. And if sometimes even the no notch rods require a little bit of notching. So maybe the bolt is hitting the girdle, the rod bolt, or the rod itself is hitting, it might clear the block itself, but when you put the girdle on, sometimes you still have to trim the girdle for the bolt. I don't know. But this thing, literally, I can't turn it over with a 1/2-inch ratchet. And if I can't turn it over with a 1/2-inch ratchet, something's not right. But, I mean, the windshield is giving me advice. It's telling me to send it. So let's, I don't know, do I bump it with the starter quick? Just to see if she'll knock over a little bit? I don't think this frickin' motor's an interference motor anyway. So even if the belt flew off, it's not going to crash the valves, especially because it has Viterra pistons from what I'm told. And if it does have Viterra pistons, it's definitely not going to hit. I'm just going to see if it'll turn over. Well, I see an issue already. There's no check engine light bulb. There's no check engine light bulb in the cluster. Whoa! It started. It just poured water. Did you guys see that? I don't know if you saw it on camera or not. That's why it was so hard to turn over. Holy shit, it was hydro-locked. It was literally hydro-locked. Whoa! Maybe we should just tighten this belt quick. Holy fuck, look how loose that is. We have tension on this side? Perfect. Okay, so I'm gonna tension the timing tensioner real quick, and that explains why this thing wasn't turning over. Did you guys just see the water geyser out of this thing? All right, so to tighten this tensioner, we are going to grab a 14 millimeter. We're going to loosen the timing tensioner bolt. So the timing tensioner bolt, we're going to get that cracked loose. There we go. And then we're going to grab a pick. So I have this pretty long pick right here, and I'm going to go in where the spring attaches to the tensioner arm, and I'm going to pull up on the tensioner manually, just like that. And while I'm holding it, I will tighten the bolt for the tensioner. I messed up a little. We have to make sure the slack is off of the front side of the belt. So, man, this thing is so hard to turn over. So now we're pulling up on the tensioner. and tightening it down. And we realistically don't even need this little spring anymore because we kind of hard mounted it. There we go. So now that our belt is tight, it's pretty good now. I should probably check the oil. It's got oil. So I'm going to start it back up and see if we can clear the water out of the thing. And then maybe we'll double check the timing. Doesn't sound too bad. It is a little idle surgy. Now it sounds like it's got a cam. Trying to get a lot of that moisture out of the frickin' motor. And we got to hook up the alternator belt because that's not hooked up currently. So we have a battery light on. The wideband is reading 18.0, so it is kind of lean. Alright, so we know that it runs. Let's shut it off here. And I'm going to get the alternator belt back installed, which is right here. I'm going to get this installed so we get rid of that battery light and we get some voltage in this thing. And believe it or not, it might actually run a little bit better with some voltage going to it. It looks like we might have an oil leak down here. Oh no, that's just water, I think. Yeah, just water. See, get this alternator belt hooked up, and then, all right, timing belt, nice and tight. Alternator belt, nice and tight. Let's fire it back up. No more battery light, that's good. After it runs for a little while, it starts doing this with the idle. Check for vacuum leaks. Full gasket. Might have a little leak. Spray the throttle body area. Idle air control valve, all the lines. Nothing super major, I don't think, but it is idling up a little bit. I'll just leave it run for a minute. Our air fuel is, yeah, we're at 16 now instead of 18. Looks like our distributor is all the way advanced right now. It just sounds like I hear something hissing. Doesn't really want to rev up. I wouldn't be surprised if we have an engine light on for something. Just gonna try this for the hell of it. Okay, map sensor's hooked up right. We'll go through our injectors, make sure they're in the right spot. And he does have a Honda that he wants me to tune it on. So I might throw the HON data in it right away, and we'll plug into it and see if we have any check engine lights. Since we don't have a bulb in the cluster, we can at least plug the HON data in and look on the laptop. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do next, because it should at least rev up, unless the tune file on this thing is totally wrong, I don't know. Alright guys, so I crawled in the car and I went through and plugged the HON data ECU in that he had, and I pretty much just loaded a stock ITR map. He said it's got B series injectors in it right now. So I just pretty much went stock Integra Type R map just to throw something in here. And let's see here, as for TPS, yep, TPS is working. But we do have an error code for idle control. Idle control code, and then it had an intake air temperature sensor engine light on as well. But I went in here to the miscellaneous tab and I disabled the intake air temp sensor. But when I start it on this map, you can see it runs. For data logging here, we go to the display. At least it's revving now. That TPS has got me questioning some shit, because it was just at 0, now it's at 9. So that's kind of weird. Let's go see if we can figure out, look at that, air fuel is like perfect. Let's see if we can figure out why the car has an idle control code. So this is our idle air control. Yeah, no change. And this is the power steering switch, black and green here. So that's not right. Let me shut this thing off. Let's see here. So it had the wrong connector plugged into the idle air control. I know some of these EKs, they had a 3-wire, especially if it had a Y7 manifold. They have a 3-wire idle air control. I don't know if that's the case on this thing or not. Let's see here what we can find back here. I'm gonna check this TPS out as well. TPS looks okay, I think. They might have put it in wrong because it looks like it was replaced at one point because it's got bolts in it instead of the stock rivet nuts or whatever they are. So the TPS might not be locked into the spot on the throttle body where it needs to be. We'll check that in a minute. Our intake temperature sensor is right here. Well, that's probably why we have an intake air temp code. I don't know if you guys can see that. But the wire is broke off on the intake air temp sensor. So that explains our intake air temp code. Now, if we can just find the plug-in for the idle air control, which looks like it's down here, down there, hanging out. I'm gonna try to grab that. We're looking for a blue and black wire. This might be it. This might be the plug-in that we need. So I'm gonna try to check that out, and I'm gonna plug that into the idle air instead of the power steering switch. The power steering, the green and black plug-in, typically goes to the steering rack, and whenever it senses movement in the rack, it actually sends signal to the idle air control to bump up the idle. So just because little motor like this doesn't make a lot of power, so any drag on the motor really kind of dogs it down, and that's just a way to keep the idle steady when you're applying load with the accessories. Wonder if some guy could wire that into like a stereo system, so like whenever it notices voltage drop or something where it'll bump the idle up. That'd be funny. Hack mod. So I'm gonna plug that in and we'll try it again. Well, that wasn't it. Keep digging. I'm gonna keep digging and see if I can find why it doesn't have power to that, or if that's the right plug-in. All right, after further investigation, this car was a 3-wire idle air control, and they converted it to the 2-wire with the plug that I plugged in, but it still has the code. So I'm kind of figuring out this wiring here. They have the yellow and black off of the stock 3-wire deal, and they took the orange wire off the 3-wire and they cut it. And then inside the car, you're supposed to jump a wire on the harness at the ECU, and they did that. So it looks like that's all good. So I'm wondering if maybe this is wired backwards. You know, the wire's in the wrong spot at the plug. So on HA Motorsports website, it says at the IACV plug, cut the orange wire and disregard it, which they did. Connect the yellow and black off of the engine harness to the green and black on the replacement 2-wire plug. So if we look at a green and black plug, because I think on this one they have black going to black, because this plug is red and black. It's not the green and black like they're talking about. The green and black will be the power steering switch, the one that they had plugged in initially. So the green is on the top on this, towards the latch of the plug, right here. So if we look at this one, the latch of the plug is red on this one. So maybe, just maybe, the wires are flipped, because it says yellow and black to the green and black. So yellow and black to the top. Black and blue wire on the engine harness to the black on the replacement. So the black on the replacement plug would be the bottom, and same with that one. Okay, so the black and blue should be going to black and blue. And then this connection right here, this heat shrink right here, has both of the wires tied into it. So I wonder if maybe they're shorting in here. I'm gonna get a razor blade and cut that heat shrink and double check, because the connection, they're using one piece of heat shrink over 2 wires. So that makes me a little concerned, because maybe the wires are touching inside of there. So I cut the heat shrink, and just to my suspicion, they had one piece of heat shrink over both wires. So these wires were literally touching like this the entire time. They need to be isolated. So I'm going to simply just put a piece of tape on this for now. And we're gonna see if the code goes away. If it does, then we'll tidy it up a little bit better. This vacuum line also fell off down here. Where the fuck? Well, the code's gone, everything's fixed, but it's idling really high. So now that the idle air control is actually working, it's idling too high. So, and the TPS is reading like 9% or something. So I wonder if they messed with the throttle stop at all to crank up the throttle at idle. Usually you do that when the idle air doesn't work. I'm gonna turn in the flathead screw over there too. There's a mixture screw. I always turn that all the way in. Oh yeah, that sucker's way out. Let's try to turn this guy in. Oh, you guys can't even see what I'm doing. That thing was like all the way out. Now let's see what it does with it turned in. That'll actually allow air to come in through, I think it's this hole, or maybe a hole behind the throttle body. It allows extra air in, which we don't want. We can control that ourselves. Also, this ECU doesn't hit the fuel pump for a couple seconds after the key goes forward. So like, now it's working, but if you leave it sit for a second, you turn the key, it takes a second for that fuel pump to come on. Still idling high, it's not as bad. Try to go on the tune here and turn the duty cycle down on the idle air, see what happens. So it's a lot better. Data log. See, we have no error codes now, which is good. We go to parameters, display. You can see our TPS is still at 9%, which is a little weird. So we're gonna go to parameters, go to TPS, and we're gonna read our minimum value, which my foot's off the gas right now. There we go, let's upload that, see what happens. Idle came down a little bit more, there we go. Now let's go back to display, 0%. Now I'm gonna keep an eye on this because the TPS was at 0 at one point, then it went to 9. But now it seems to be staying where it should. Try to get this thing to calm down even more. Watch this. Set our timing at idle lower. I don't know if you guys heard the change in pitch of the motor. Now we're idling right at 1,000 pretty steadily. 13.8 air fuel. This car might have a vacuum leak somewhere, I'm not sure. I just went down to 8 degrees timing idle. Now we're at 950. See, it does kind of surge back up for a second. But nonetheless, it is idling a little bit better. It's actually purring nice and smooth. I'm gonna have to do something with the wiring back there. I just taped them off for now. Yeah, there we go. We could pull this down a little bit. The throttle butterfly. I bet you they messed with that. When they unplug the IACV and don't use that, I usually use the butterfly to bump the idle back up. But since we got that working, we're not going to need the idle butterfly open as far. So we might try to do that quick. Just loosen that guy up. Because one thing when I tune cars, guys, I like to have it idle really good. It's just a thing that is something I just do. I don't send shit out the door dying at the stoplight. I try to take my time with shit like this because a lot of times This kind of stuff is what, you know, you get returns from. Like, hey man, car runs really good wide open throttle, but runs like shit everywhere else. I try to make the car run good everywhere, take my time. I may charge a little bit more, but that's what you get. I try to do my best work I can. Another thing too is, since this distributor is cranked all the way that way, that might be our 8 degrees on the map in the ECU might actually be 14 or 15 out here. So that might have been another reason why I was idling high. If this was crammed one way and the ECU said 18 degrees or whatever it was at, it might have been 26 or 27 degrees at the motor. So that's another reason you always want to set your ignition timing, so you know whatever you have in the ECU is what the motor is actually getting. Because you guys saw I took timing out at idle. I have 8 degrees in the map right now and it idles good. But I bet you if we move that, it might even idle even lower. So that might be what I do next. Let's set the ignition timing. Alright, so I got the timing light hooked up and I have the set timing feature enabled on the Honda, so it locks the ECU at 16 degrees. And then we set our timing light to 16 degrees as well. And we're going to shoot the cam and the crank. And surprisingly, this thing is like spot on. So if we look, it's going to be really hard to tell on camera, but yeah, you can't see it on camera, but we're looking for the cam to say up, going straight up and down, and then there's a mark on the left and a mark on the right, and they're level with the head. So this thing's right on the money. So I don't know, it runs pretty good right now. I think we could bump the idle set screw down a little bit, but I think it's fine. Honestly, it runs really smooth right now. And I'll be straight up honest with you guys. With big injector stuff, granted this is stock, but I'll be upgrading the injectors in this car as well. When you put larger injectors in and stuff like that, they usually idle better manipulating the timing at idle than they do running recommended timing or whatever. They tend to surge more, so it'll surge less and will just overall idle smoother doing it that way, where you set your idle mechanically a little bit higher and then pull it back with ignition timing or whatever else. You can use fuel as well, but it is a hell of a lot better already. Cranks right up now. Let me show you the startup. This fucker's probably overheating. It's been idling for a while. 199 degrees. Let's see if we can override that fan and see if the fan comes on. So we'll go to protection. Right here. We'll go to override fan control. Alright, we set this at like 185. Our boiling temp, we'll put it at like 220. And we'll upload and see if the fan comes on. The motor did dog down a little bit. Let's see if the temp, yep, the temp's coming down already. So I'm thinking that the fan is working. And now we have that set up through the ECU as well. Come on, go down to 195 before I get out of the car. Come on. You can do it. Yeah! Okay. That's just telling me the fan's working without me getting out of the car. Yes, sir. Nice and spinny boy. Alright, I gotta clean up this wiring for the idle control. And I don't know what else, really. Probably start doing some tugs on it. I don't know how far these stock injectors will go. Should we find out? Or should we just put injectors? should probably just put injectors in it. Now that I wasted a lot of time tuning the stock injectors. But now that we know the car runs perfect, before we swap injectors, if we swap injectors and then it starts having an issue, we know to look at the injectors or the tune. Because we know that the car runs good, it doesn't have any check engine lights right now, and when we swap the injectors, if it runs worse after we tune for the injectors, then we definitely know something's up. So, you know, try to keep it simple, do one thing at a time, so you know you're not chasing your tail. Unless you know these things like the back of your head or the back of your hand, whatever people say. Unless you know them like that, it's you know, you can get lost pretty easily in these things when you start modifying and doing all this stuff. All right, guys, so now I'm actually swapping out the injectors on this car, and I'm gonna have to wire in new EV6 pigtails for the plugins, and we're gonna be swapping in. I just took out the bolts for the fuel rail, or I should say the nut. There was only one nut holding the entire fuel rail, so I'll replace the nut on this side as well, so it'll have both the nuts holding the fuel rail instead of just the one. And I am putting in a set of Hunter tuned. I am installing a set of Hunter tuned custom 450s. So these injectors actually flow about 600 cc, a little bit more than the rating that's on them. And I got a bunch of these, well, not a bunch of them, I got like a couple sets I ordered to do some testing, and they didn't pan out enough for me to order more. Out of the couple sets that I got, I only got about 2 or 3 usable sets out of them. So that seller that I was buying from, you know, I guess I'm losing out. But they'll work perfect on this little single cam, especially for pump gas. It's not going to be an issue at all. And these injectors have actually a really good spray pattern, and I flow match these within 2%. So these ones should work great. We have a set of top hats on there as well, which all can be purchased through my website. These injectors cannot be purchased right now because I'm still in the testing phase. I actually have a couple more sets coming, 1600s, more 2200 Bosch, which I have been selling. The decap stuff is always available, but a lot of guys don't want to do the decapped injectors. They want something new. So now I'm going to be finally offering a budget conscience, or budget in mind, brand new injector, brand new tested, matched injectors. They're all stainless construction, so they take any type of fuel. Yeah. So, but I'll talk more about that stuff later, but I'm gonna be putting those in here. We're gonna be tuning it with them. So, like I said, I got the top hats installed, which convert the large O-ring down to the smaller Honda O-ring. And this O-ring in the bottom will actually be the same as this O-ring that was on this injector. And we're gonna put the grommets. These factory grommets will go right back in. Sometimes the grommets are a little bit stretched out and they don't fit that great. If that's the case, you can actually just take a little bit of tape around the bottom of the injector so it fits a little snugger, or wrap a piece of heat shrink around it. But these are perfect. I'm gonna put them in and I'll show you guys when I'm done. We'll get it running again with the new injectors, and then that'll probably wrap up this video. It's kind of long. If you guys enjoy getting these old Hondas running, be sure to subscribe to my channel, especially if you guys made it this long into the video. Definitely consider giving me a like. The likes definitely help out, show this video to more people with the algorithm and stuff like that with YouTube. So any support that you guys can give, whether it be a like on the video, a subscribe if you guys are new, or a share to your friends, if you like seeing old Hondas come back to life. So yeah, let's get it done. All right, I got the new injectors installed into the rail with the top hats. They fit perfect. Hell yeah. I replaced the nut back here. And I just primed the system to make sure there was no fuel leaks. No fuel leaks. Now I'm just gonna get these wired up to the EV6 style injector plug. We're gonna get them plugged in, and then we'll tell the Honda that we're running the new injectors. We'll get it fired up and get out of here for the night. All right, guys, I got the new injectors all wired up and installed. Car's running pretty good. I don't even know if you guys can freaking see the wideband. The light's messing with the camera. So yeah, got that installed. Now I'm gonna do his map sensor, make sure it works, because I've never used one of these Sparks Racing map sensor. Never used one of these, so we're gonna try it.
Hey guys.
Hey guys. I'm home for the night. I just got done editing this video. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hit the like button. If you made it this long, 42 minutes or whatever this video is going to be, if you made it this long, please give me a like, honestly.
And comment if you like when Christine films better.
Yeah, Christine misses filming with me. It's like one of her, I don't know. What?
How many beers have you had?
None.
What?
I think it's her destiny to help me film.
Thank you.
So hopefully we're gonna go film some more stuff tomorrow, but yeah, thanks for watching. Have a great night and a better tomorrow. This little Civic runs pretty good. Injector's working good. We're gonna strap it down on the dyno probably tomorrow, maybe the next day, I don't know when, but yeah. See ya!